Hello, dear students. Today we'll study lesson number 5, Indigo, from Flamingo textbook. Chapter 5, Indigo, is written by Louis Fisher. Let us talk about this author first. Louis Fisher was born in Philadelphia in 1896. He served as a volunteer in the British Army between 1918 to 1920. Fisher made a career as a journalist and wrote for the New York Times, the Saturday Review, and for European and Asian publications. He was also a member of the faculty of Princeton University. Louis Fisher wrote a biography of Mahatma Gandhi entitled The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. Indigo is an excerpt from this book, which is widely acknowledged as one of the best books written on Gandhiji. So let us talk about the detailed explanation of the chapter. Before actually moving with the explanation, let us talk about the theme. The chapter Indigo emphasizes the fact that an effective leadership can solve any kind of problem without any harm to anybody. This chapter deals with the way Mahatma Gandhiji solved the problem of poor sharecroppers of Champaran in a non-violent way. The author, Louis Fisher, explains about his first interaction with Mahatma Gandhiji. He says that he first met Gandhiji in 1942 at his ashram, which was in Sevagram. It was located in central India. Gandhiji said that he would tell him about his struggle against the British, which first took place in the year 1917. He says that in the month of December, in the year 1916, Mahatma Gandhiji went to attend the annual meeting of the Indian National Congress at Lucknow. There were about 2,301 representatives and visitors. Gandhiji recalled that a small farmer named Rajkumar Shukla came to him, who was poor and thin. He requested Gandhiji, this person Rajkumar Shukla, he requested Gandhiji to visit Champaran, a place in the foothills of the Himalaya mountain range near Kingdom of Nepal. He told Gandhiji that he was a sharecropper. Now, who is a sharecropper? A sharecropper is a farmer who gives a part of the crop as rent to the owner of that piece of land that he cultivates. He told him that because of an old agreement, many of the peasants in Champaran were sharecroppers. He had come to meet Gandhiji on someone's suggestion, as he was determined to find a solution for the sharecroppers who were facing hardships due to this agreement. He sought Gandhiji's help. After hearing his problem, Gandhiji told him that he had to visit Kanpur and some other parts of India due to prior appointments. Shukla went with him everywhere. After this, Gandhiji returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad. Shukla was the person who always was there with him for several weeks, begging him to fix a date to visit Champaran. As Gandhiji was impressed with the determination of the peasant, he said that he would be visiting Kolkata after a few months and that Shukla should meet him there. On the day that had been fixed, Shukla was eagerly waiting for Gandhiji. When Gandhiji got free, they both took a train to Patna. Then they went to the house of a lawyer, Rajendra Prasad, who later became the President of India. When they reached there, he was not at home, but the servants allowed both of them to stay at the grounds because they knew Shukla. They all knew him because Shukla used to assist their master in helping indigo sharecroppers. They didn't allow Gandhiji to draw water from the well, as they took him to be an untouchable and didn't want to pollute the entire water source. As Shukla was not able to provide Gandhiji with adequate information, therefore he decided to go to Muzaffarpur, which was on the way to Champaran, to obtain the complete information. He sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani, who was a teacher at Arts College in Muzaffarpur. Gandhiji had seen him at Tagore's Shantiniketan school. Gandhiji took a train to Muzaffarpur that arrived at midnight on 15th April 1917. Kriplani was already waiting there with his students. Gandhiji stayed there for 2 days at Professor Malkani's home, who was a teacher in a government school. According to Gandhiji, it was a remarkable thing that a government professor was entertaining him, because in those days people in small localities were afraid of supporting those who supported home rule. The news of Gandhiji's arrival and the purpose of his mission spread through Muzaffarpur and Champaran very fast. Sharecroppers started to visit him. Muzaffarpur lawyers informed Gandhiji about the whole situation as they represented various peasants in the court. They explained to him about their cases and the fee that they charged them. Gandhiji scolded the lawyers for charging such high fee from the poor sharecroppers. He decided that it was useless to go to the courts, as the judiciary was not doing anything good for the peasants. He said that as long as the peasants were suppressed and full of fear, it was useless to visit the courts. He wanted to set them free from fear. Most of the cultivable land in the Champaran district was owned by Englishmen who had divided them into various estates. The peasants were the occupants of these lands. Englishmen forced the peasants to cultivate indigo on 15% of their land and to give the crop to them as rent. All this was done through a long-term agreement. While all this was going on, the landlords came to know about the chemical indigo being prepared in Germany. It was a blue-colored dye made with chemicals. They started demanding money from the poor peasants in order to cancel their agreements as they no longer required the indigo plantations. The sharecropping system was very annoying. So many of the peasants paid for the cancellation of the agreement. But as the news about synthetic indigo spread and reached the uneducated peasants, they started demanding their money back. When Gandhiji arrived at Champaran, he decided to gather the facts. For this, he visited the secretary of the British Landlords Association. The secretary didn't answer him because he could not give any information to an outsider. After this, he went to the commissioner of the Tirhut division. Champaran district was under Tirhut division. The commissioner not only threatened Gandhiji but also suggested him to leave Tirhut immediately. Though Gandhiji was threatened by the commissioner, he didn't leave the place. He then went to Motihari, which was the capital of Champaran. He was joined by several lawyers. When they reached the station, they were welcomed by a large number of people. He then went to a house which was later converted into his headquarters. He started his inquiry into the matter. Gandhiji decided to visit a nearby village when he came to know about an incident of ill treatment given to a peasant. He was on his way on an elephant when the supervisor or the messenger stopped him and ordered him to return back to the town. Gandhiji followed him and the messenger took him back to his home. He was then served a notice which ordered him to quit his movement and return back. Gandhiji received the notice and signed a receipt on which he wrote that he would not obey the order. As a result, Gandhiji got summons to appear in court next day. Gandhiji wasn't able to sleep the whole night. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad and asked him to come to Bihar and get some powerful people along. He sent some guidelines to the ashram and also telegraphed the whole matter to the viceroy. Next morning, Motihari was full of peasants as they wanted to support Gandhiji. None of them knew about his works in South Africa. They only knew that there was a Mahatma who wanted to help them and was in trouble due to the officials. They started gathering in front of the courthouse. This incident was their attempt of setting themselves free from the fear of the British. As the crowd had gathered in front of the court building, it became difficult for the officers to control the mob. They had to take Gandhiji's help to regulate the crowd. Gandhiji very politely told the officials that if they would misuse their power, then there were chances that they would have to face a revolt from the Indians. As the situation was getting tougher, the lawyer requested the court to postpone the trial by some days. The authorities decided to first consult the higher authorities. Gandhiji objected against the delay in the proceedings of the case. He read a statement in front of the court in which he accepted his fault in a very humble manner. He said that he was not a lawbreaker and didn't want to go against the law, but his duty towards humanity has a greater influence on him and it forced him to do so. He refused to leave the town because he wanted to help the sharecroppers, as it was his moral duty. The magistrate asked him to arrange for bail because he was going to give his judgment after the 2 hours long break. Gandhiji refused to seek bail, and later on he was released without it. He was released without bail. When the court proceedings restarted, the judge refused to deliver any judgment for many days to come. He allowed Gandhiji to remain free. Some well-known lawyers like Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu and Maulana Mazharul Haq came from Bihar to help and advise Gandhiji. Gandhiji asked that if he was sentenced to jail, then what would be their course of action? One senior lawyer replied that they were there to help him out, and if he was sentenced to jail, then they would return back. When Gandhiji came to know about their decision, he asked them to help the sharecroppers who were facing unfairness. Rajendra Prasad and other lawyers concluded that if Gandhiji could go to jail for the people of their area, although he was a stranger, then they should also follow him, as they had always claimed to serve the peasants and fought their legal battles too. They decided that if Gandhiji went to jail, then they would follow too. On hearing this, Gandhiji assured them that their struggle for Champaran's peasants had been won. He divided the group into pairs of 2 and made a sequence in which they had to voluntarily surrender in the court. After some days, the magistrate sent a letter to Gandhiji in which it was written that as per the orders of Deputy Governor, the case against him had been taken back. It was for the first time in modern India that a peaceful protest against the government had been won. Gandhiji and other lawyers carried on an in-depth investigation into the injustice with the farmers. Statements of about 10,000 peasants were recorded and various documentary proofs were collected. The whole area vibrated with activity, the investigators and the protesting landlords. In June, Gandhiji was called up to be present before Deputy Governor Sir Edward Gate. Before meeting him, he met his chief supporters and made plans for civil disobedience in case he did not return. Gandhiji had 4 long interviews with the Deputy Commissioner, which led to the information of a commission that inquired into the indigo sharecroppers' situation. The commission had landlords, government officials, and Gandhiji, who was the only spokesperson for the peasants. Gandhiji remained in Champaran for 7 months. He also made several short visits later. His visit on the request of a peasant was presumed to last a few days, but it took a year. The official inquiry didn't favor the planters, hence, they agreed to pay back to the peasants. But they questioned Gandhiji regarding the amount to be repaid. The moneylenders had thought that Gandhiji would ask for the full payment of the money which they had taken from the peasants forcefully and fraudulently. But he asked for only 50% and his decision was firm. A missionary, Reverend J.Z. Hodge, who had a close watch on the matter, reported this. The planters offered to pay only 25% as they thought it would be rejected by Gandhiji. He immediately accepted it. Now, what is the reason behind that, or what he thought about it? Let's talk about that. Gandhiji said that the amount of money was not important. But by giving money, the planters had bowed down to the peasants and had given away their honor too. The planters who earlier behaved as if they were above the law now had to abide by it. This made the peasants realize their rights and give them courage to fight for them. Events had proven Gandhiji's position. The British planters had to leave their property within the next few years. As a result, those properties were returned back to the peasants. Indigo sharecropping soon came to an end. Gandhiji was not satisfied by achieving only the political or only the economic solutions. He sought to remove the cultural and social backwardness too of Champaran. Gandhiji wanted to do something to remove the backwardness in the villages of Champaran. He requested teachers such as Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parikh and their wives to teach the villagers. Both of them were followers of Gandhiji. Many other volunteers came from Bombay and Pune to join them. Mrs. Gandhi and their youngest son Devdas arrived from the ashram for their help. Primary schools were opened in 6 villages where Kasturbai used to teach the ashram rules on cleanliness and community sanitation. The health conditions of the people of Champaran were very poor. So Gandhiji got a doctor who offered his services free of cost for 6 months. There were only 3 medicines, castor oil, quinine and sulfur ointment available. A patient with a coated tongue was given castor oil, a malaria patient was served a dose of quinine, and a patient with a skin disorder was given ointment and castor oil. The women in the area used to wear dirty clothes, and when Gandhiji tried to know the reason through his wife, he was told that those were the only saris each of them were having, or each of them had. While Gandhiji was in Champaran, he kept a long-distance vigil on the ashram. He used to send letters of orders regarding financial matters. Once he wrote to the locals that it was time to dig new latrines as the old ones had started giving foul smell. The Champaran incident challenged Gandhiji's life. He said that he had done a regular thing. He had put his point that the Britishers could not order him in his own country. The Champaran Satyagraha was not an act of opposition. It was an attempt to help out the poor and tortured peasants. This was Gandhiji's way to solve issues. His politics was knitted up with the everyday problems faced by the millions of people. He did not aim at the fulfillment of ideas, rather, he was concerned for the people. The basic idea was to serve humanity and make a free Indian who could stand for his rights. Charles Freer Andrews, who was a peacemaker, visited Gandhiji before going on a tour of duty to the Fiji Islands. Gandhiji's lawyer friends wanted Andrews to stay at the ashram and help them, but Gandhiji refused. Now, what was Gandhiji's philosophy behind that? He said that they did not need the help of Britishers, as it showed a lack of trust in their own abilities. He asked them not to seek any help from Mr. Andrews, as he was an Englishman. Rajendra Prasad later on stated that Gandhiji had read their thoughts and his reply served as a lesson of self-sufficiency for them. Being self-dependent, free, and helping the peasants, all these acts of Gandhiji were interconnected. So, this is how we discuss the things in the chapter Indigo, and the Champaran episode became a symbol of self-reliance and Indian independence. Do remember that the chapter is written by Louis Fisher, and he wrote a biography on Mahatma Gandhiji entitled as The Life of Mahatma Gandhiji, and Indigo is an excerpt from the same book. Thank you so much.